So as David mentioned, we're going to go tactical and practical with the brands and operators in hospitality and really try to get underneath the covers of what they're doing in their businesses to operationalize AI. So I'm going to start with Mike. And I'm going to ask you a little bit about what you at Wyndham have done to prepare yourself for the AI wave, and tell us a little bit more about technology within Wyndham.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeanelle. Well, Wyndham has been doing a lot with AI. We've been preparing and taking advantage of AI for a number of years. Last year, we started to experiment early, and the way that we were able to do that is we don't have a whole lot of tech debt. We've got top-down support. We have the right people and teams. We have the right tools and platforms in place, and that's allowed us to experiment early. Some of the use cases that we looked at early last year includes doing our messaging platform for our hotels. So that's enabling our guests some self-service, removing some workload from our owners. We have platforms that are supporting our agents in our contact center, giving them real-time feedback and helping them so that they know next best action and what to do next. And we set up the right governance and controls in place to enable that. So we stood a steering committee up early last year, communicated our acceptable usage policy. We also made sure that we have strong governance and controls. We evaluated what our vendors are doing with AI. We put additional processes in place to make sure that they're protecting our data and doing the right things and leveraging AI responsibly. But they were all the things that started to create the path for us, and we've been taking advantage of that.
Thanks, Mike. So you talked a little about tech debt, and we know at Marriott you're under a process of transforming your technology stack, but that hasn't stopped you from conceptualizing and run proof of concepts. So Nitin, can you talk a little bit about what you've done with Homes and Villas by Marriott and the learnings you've had?
No, absolutely. So yes, you're right. So we're going through a big transformation for the underlying bedrock of what has been our very old reservation system. But while that happens, I think the beauty of Marriott is how we are able to innovate in different pockets and in different layers. So what happens when the new bedrock formation is happening right now? Does it mean that the entire organization should come to a standstill? I don't think so. The beauty of the technology now is that you can operate in different layers, and I'll speak a little bit about how Homes and Villas becomes a layer in itself. When we just saw what ChatGPT had done and what people could do, we boiled it down to a very simple insight. People can code in English is the insight now, which means earlier to talk to your complex systems, you needed very sophisticated engineers who could talk to all these systems and stuff like that. But the need of the hour is, can I come and say something in English, and can you make your system do what I just asked it to do? And when we thought of that, the best place for us to unleash, where I thought was the most interesting place to be, was the discovery place. So where do I go? Where do I stay? The very core questions of what we connect people to. And even though GPT was a chat technology, we decided to disrupt the core, which is that we decided to mold it into a search technology, because you got to meet your guests where they are. And I don't fundamentally believe in taking guests to where you want them to go. So where they are, they're in the search patterns. That's how they engage. That's how they touch you. So with Homes and Villas, what we did is that Homes and Villas was also a very good use case because of the size and how big the Homes and Villas portfolio has gotten in terms of number of homes we support. There is so much out there from what people want to choose from. And it was very appropriate to bring generative AI to that, so that you could come say things like, I just want to go someplace warm. Where can I go? You could come say things like, hey, I want to go somewhere with a tall, shiny, pointy building. It happens to be Paris, right? And these are real prompts from real people, by the way, which we are reading now. And so there was so much to be learned. So we thought the best way to learn is that we use Homes and Villas as a testing lab in this case for the bigger enterprise. And we put things out and we let people tell us how do they want to use these technologies, and then we scale.
So listening to the customers before scaling. is sort of your pro tip.
Yes, because as large enterprises, how do we listen to customers, right? So we listen to customers in various ways. For example, we do have the advantage of working with some great companies like yourself and many other consulting companies out there who come and tell us what the customers want. But while that it has big advantage, in this case it was not going to work because nobody knew what generative AI could do to your business, and everybody was guessing, and everybody was using their best guess sort of to say, this is where the industry is going, this is where the industry is going. We just wanted to short circuit that process because we figured everybody's in the business of figuring it out right now. What is the best way to figure it out is to take a big, bold bet of saying, I know this is not perfect. I'm still going to take the risk to put this out. And I think that's where Marriott's innovation really comes in. It's amazing how this whole thing unfolded. And now as we think of scale, we are not just relying on second-party data or third-party data in telling us what does AI want. We have first-party data where people are telling us how they want to use it, what do they want to use it for, what medium do they want to use it for, what are the scaling challenges, and all of the rest. So I think it gives us a huge advantage, and my advice to everybody will be that just put it out. Whatever you got, just put it out.
So you're the contrarian to take it slow. You're saying just move and go.
Personally, I saw my background is startups. So when I thought of coming to Marriott, I was like, oh my God, I can do big companies. But the interesting thing is how Marriott was so open to letting me be me. And that's sort of the culture shift also, where, of course, there's so much wisdom in not disrupting because our companies really work, right? And they provide a big purpose in this world. And then you don't want to disrupt that because it's not like something is not working and you want to disrupt that. But then with technology moving at such high pace, you also want to keep and meet people where they want you right now. So you don't want to fall behind either. So I think now it's a good mix of both things that we do together.
Well, staying on the theme of insights and being able to draw insights from data, I'm going to turn it over to Jess and Ray. You both have insights in your title. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you're using AI to derive insights that then drive your strategy forward?
Thanks. Thank you, Jeanelle. Great to be here. Couple thoughts on that. So within Hyatt, we've done a lot of research around what it takes to be a great leader at our company and really drive this vision and purpose of care. So some of that research was fascinating in the sense that it pulled out a lot of basic fluency skills, right? How to be customer-centric or guest-centered, how to have a growth mindset, really think about transformational thinking, prioritizing with data, test and learn and experimentation are sort of really fundamental to how we think about and teach leadership. So in the data organization, what we're trying to do within our strategy are really sort of deep fundamental areas, this idea of self-service. So we're working to sort of engineer the data and make it accessible and really integrated into the analytics capabilities really everywhere in the system. And as we do that, we've started to introduce generative AI-based capabilities into that work. So natural language search, making sure that it's conversational so I can ask 2, 3, 4 questions in a row. How do I start to get into generative-based insights? And how do I start to, in a really deeply dimensional way, understand what's changing and why in a deep way? So what that's allowing us to do from an insight perspective is get that insight deeper into the organization and really start to radically drop the technical skills that you need to have so we can push that decision making way deeper and further into the way we run the business. So those would be some thoughts that I might share.
Yeah, and I think there's a similar thread. The research tells us one broad thing, which is guests want to remove friction from the experience. They want a frictionless experience as they travel. That starts throughout the journey, right? It starts with dreaming and all the way through the stay and post-stay experience. And I think, going back to what Nitin said and to the conversation this morning, it is both being fast and slow, right? So yes, we need to evolve and be maybe one step ahead of our customers, But to believe that we know where the puck is going at this point is not true. We don't know how that customer behavior, how the journey is going to evolve. What are the opportunities for us to continue to remove that friction from the stay? We don't know, and so we need to continue to revolutionize how we think about it. And that, a lot of that is sort of the not sexy data work that happens behind the scenes. That's so critical and core to our strategy. And then it's putting things out there. It is a test and learn approach and seeing what guests are responsive to. And that's been really insightful.
So you all have mentioned data. And Mike, I'm going to turn to you on sort of the governance model you put into place. And it sounded like you've gotten very tactical and practical about it. So can you share some of the either impediments you faced along the way in terms of coming up with your data governance strategy? And I'd love to hear from all of you, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. So data governance and controls always been important for us, and in the way that we develop responsibly our AI workloads is we leverage that same governance and control. So the same would go for anything that is developed or delivered to us from our vendors. We expect the same from them, and we make sure and evaluate that they're going to be able to deliver on that promise. But it started early for us. It was when we stood up our steering committee and then started to launch our acceptable usage policy, started to put those controls in place. The security team also added additional controls to make sure that we didn't have any team members that was using and putting data into public models and causing that type of issue. So it's been a build on top of that. It really is a journey. Even yesterday, I had a call with our legal team and one of our business stakeholders who had a new use case that just popped up on one of the platforms we're using, and he said, "Hey, can I do this?" And he had that question. We had a conversation around it, and ultimately we've updated our policy for it. So it's that type of evolution and dynamic approach that builds on the strong framework you already have while you're taking care of your team members, taking care of your customers and guests, and providing that service.
Yeah, so as similar sort of story at the start for us, right? We put together a framework. The first thing we had to do was be thoughtful about how to protect ourselves, protect our data, and participate in a really safe way. Like every company, we had some mistakes. Mostly, they were all internal, which is great, right? Folks putting things into a public model and teaching them that that's not a good idea. The second thing is just participate. And that was recognizing that all of the vendor partners and all the things we're doing internally have a natural evolutionary state to them, right? We had chatbots that leveraged AI. We've had that for years now, right? That has naturally evolved to leverage generative AI technology. A lot of other use cases there. I mean, literally dozens of use cases where we're innovating on a daily basis, where we're just letting our capabilities naturally evolve. And that's where this is, the tide is sort of just rising as we go, which is fantastic. And the last thing is in the true innovations, right? Those are the bigger bets that we've made to hopefully change and remove friction from the guest experience. And I think, for us, the data is at the core. I wish I could say when we made our initial investments into our core data in 2017 that I knew this was coming and that was the reason why we were doing it. That wasn't the key driver. It was because we wanted to be more of a data-centric company. But it is core to why we think we're going to be really successful, and to some of the conversation earlier today, why the suppliers really should be, the direct beneficiaries of this into the future. And it's so detailed, right? Like, what does data mean in this case? Well, it means when we think about a room, you've got to know everything that's in that room. You have to fully be able to atomize what is included in that room. That's what's going to power these engines into the future, and they have to be really accessible in a friendly way. And without that, customers are not going to be able to achieve what they want from our industry. So it's hugely important that actually every major player in the industry has to make those changes, because that's what's going to drive customer behavior change, right? If they go to one of us and they have one experience and another and get a different experience, they're not going to know what is the best way to shop for travel in the future. And so hopefully, we're going to learn from the mistakes of the past and innovate more as an industry.
Can I take a little different take, because Jess already covered one side of it. I think all our companies do a pretty good job in taking care of customer data. Those are table stakes. I don't think that changes. But the slightly different angle I want to take is that we think what generative AI or AI is meant to do is hyper-personalization. Now, when we think about hyper-personalization, that is when sharing of data comes into the forefront. So how can I do personalization without sharing data? And now you start talking about breaking the current molds of how we preserve data or what we share with other players here and stuff like that. But I will just take a slightly different approach for people who are still looking to build and wanting to put things out there. You can go with AI very, very safely if you flip the definition of hyper-personalization. Now, if hyper-personalization means that you have 10 years of my data, you should know me by now, and you should be able to serve to me what I want, that is one. But I don't actually subscribe to that school of thought. I think no PII should be shared, and you can still give somebody the perception of relevance without sharing PII. And how do you do that is you make trip intent the king. Now, each one of us, you could have 20 years of data on me. You have no idea why I take trip A versus trip B. You guys have come here for this conference here. Your intent for trip was very different. I don't want to get a suite. I don't want a bigger room. I don't want a fancier hotel. I want a clean room with a decent stay. Now, when I go out with my family, I want all the bells and whistles, right? So me as the same person, you could have 20 years of data on me. I have 5 personalities. Which one should show up? Is it the personality of me who travels with their family? Is it when I go for a work conference? Is it when I'm on something else? Blah, blah, blah. So if you switch that and you go to trip intent, you can keep all your data safe. You don't have to go into the route of hyper-personalization, thinking only my last historical data is what is relevant, and you can still achieve and meet the customer where you want to meet them. So there's a de-risk way of doing stuff.
I think Ray has a...
Yeah, just a few thoughts on this one. Thank you. A lot of great thoughts. Just, you know, our guests, our customers, our colleagues, our owners entrust us with a serious amount of information. And we want to be on that very fine, trust is huge. We want to sort of be on that upper edge. And the regulatory space in China, in Europe, in regions really all around the world is moving. In the United States, it's moving really, really fast. So the way that I think we think about that, certainly I think about that, is we think of data as a product, right? And the key is to engineer, architecturally correct, make sure that the cyber and the privacy, sort of requirements and the ethics and the purpose of the business are translated into the governance sort of standards and procedures within the organization from an AI and a data perspective, and then to make sure that that's hardwired in right at the beginning and monitored over time. So I think getting the architecture and the infrastructure correct is really key, and then making sure that the process that you use to set a vision, engineer the product, and drive it to fruition and scale it is clean from a protection and a trust perspective.
Yeah, it sounds like, regulations obviously drive different behaviors. It sounds like you all have a model and a framework for data governance, which as a traveler, I'm very glad that you're keeping my data safe. But you guys have all mentioned Gen AI and AI kind of almost in the same breath, but the two are not inextricably the same. Can you give me a little perspective on sort of the nuance between Gen AI and AI in your businesses from an operational standpoint? Do you want to start, Mike?
Absolutely. So standard traditional AI we've been using for a real long time in supporting our properties, providing owner value, and supporting our guests to remove friction, to Jess's point. That was a combination of things like chatbots and AI, ML, analysis of data, and using that to provide real-time data-driven insights. With the introduction of Gen AI, the way that we're thinking and imagining that is more around human augmentation. So it's with the human, allowing them to either do better, faster, or do things that they weren't able to do before. And that includes our travelers. So think of our travelers who are researching and looking for inspiration for places to stay. having an AI as a travel assistant to help them do that and give them ideas that they may not have otherwise thought of just based on their intent and based on their interest is really where you start to get a lot of power around generative AI. The same is said on supporting our hotels. We talk about personalization and not having PII. There's a lot of personalization that you can provide that's incredibly meaningful. You know, I think of an example I used recently I go up to our barista coffee shop in our office, and she knows what coffee I drink, what size, that I don't use half and half. She has that ready for me as I'm approaching the counter. She doesn't know anything about me other than my name, but she knows that intent, and she knows my preferences, and she's able to translate that into an experience that's meaningful. So that's where I think generative AI can really provide a more meaningful, personalized experience, given the right data, to enhance that travel.
I can speak about it from a sort of builder's perspective. I think as I'm seeing our own lives evolve from where we were when we launched the Homes and Villas feature, the search feature just using Gen AI, versus where we are today, I think today is a mixture of so many things because you need to keep a few key tenets in mind, right? So scalability, cost, concurrency, blah, blah, blah. So when you think of all of this, I think the future architectures are going to be very fluid, and we're already seeing that. There are, for a same question that you pose to our system, part of the questions are going to be solved with traditional AI, part of the question is going to be solved by generative AI, and there could be layers of intelligence in the middle which dictate who gets to solve the question. And that is such an interesting sort of place to be because you can control your cost fully, you can keep your round trip times really low for things which do not require the round trip to a large language model, and your hybrid architectures are going to be a mix of traditional AI, mix of small language models who are only meant to do a particular task for you, and whenever your initial brain decides that this is complex enough for a large language model is the only time you go to the large language model. And so in my mind, I operate in these two things. All our data can answer a limited set of questions. There are questions the customer is asking which is outside of our data sets. Can you build an intelligence to just answer the question, can your data answer it, or do I need to go out? And if I need to go out, then comes the large language model picture into play. And then you bring all the responses back and stitch them together. So the customer is never going to know who the heck answered the question, because I think in the future we are not going to know who answered the question because it's going to work so seamlessly. But with this, organizations of our size will have achieved the key tenets of cost, concurrency, scale. And the customer will get a seamless experience out of it.
As long as the answers are correct.
Oh, the relevancy is the key. The problem is the moment you put irrelevant stuff out, people don't come back. And so this is why I never use the word relevancy with my team. I always use the term perception of relevancy. I should feel like it was relevant. What is relevant, nobody knows.
I think we got just really theoretical there.
Okay. So, you know, what hasn't changed is we start with our purpose. We get really, really clear about the business outcomes that we're trying to achieve, how we want people to change their behavior, how we're going to measure that. And then we try to just cut clean to the sort of the best solution, the best technology that can really deliver that systematically. So, you know, the way I think about generative AI, like AI has been around for a long time. There's been capabilities that existed. Generative started to emerge in a really, really real way in the last, 3 years or so. And I think we're at a very early state in what these capabilities are going to be able to actually do. So, you know, each quarter, what I'm seeing is, you know, the opportunity to dream about the business and to think about how you want to shape it and change it. You know, just these wild new opportunities are flowing into that thought. So really making sure that our leaders are transformative in their thinking, that they're modern, and that they're really staying current as they think about how we want revenue management, sales, loyalty, finance to function is the key. And then making sure that you sort of got the technology space, the infrastructure, the operational capabilities ready to pop and drive that is key, but some thoughts.
Well, for a sector that hasn't been known to be first mover in innovation, it sounds like you four are on board, but making sure you get the full org behind you. I'm excited to see what you all accomplish. With that, I'm going to close out my sort of prepared questions and open it up to the audience here to see if there are any questions from folks in the room.
Can you describe which data systems you are reducing and which ones you're adding, given what you're trying to do? What are you not using as much? Your data is all over the place. CRM, ERP.
Well, we're not reducing anything, I'll tell you that. So I think things are going to move. I don't think we are at a stage. This is why I find the cost-saving arguments very interesting. You can declare a cost-saving number, but then when the time for budget comes, nobody wants to take the budget cut. So which means we are still firing at the same level. So I don't think that from a systems perspective, reduction is yet into play because you are still supporting hybrid infrastructures right now. So it's not that you have completely made clean switches into new paradigms and your older systems are now being used. So there might be a day when that happens, but I don't see it happening today.
Yeah, I actually see it growing. For us, we're harmonizing more data. So we have data sets and data lakes that ran independent for use cases. They're now being brought in to a unified data model that we're using both for personalization and feeding into generative AI. So it's giving us a better data output because of that change, but it is really looking out across our ecosystem to identify the additional data sets that we can now use as part of these use cases.
I mean, I'm just reinforced. I mean, people want more data, more granular data, lower latency data, high performant data, higher quality data. I mean, it's a data exercise at the end of the day, but I mean, that's the same thing that I think I'm seeing as well.
Yeah, and we went through an exercise regardless of this around decommissioning legacy sources and have made a lot of progress on that over the last decade. For this, it's all about growth, but targeted growth also in understanding customer interaction and what is working, right? What are the questions that customers are asking? What's performing well? What's driving the right kind of outcomes? There's a ton of growth that's going to come from that space.
So, last few years, couple of years has been kind of a lot of investment in AI, testing it out. Are we getting to a stage where return on investment is being scrutinized more, and are you being asked to produce results?
I can't imagine a time that we weren't asked to produce results, and that is both internally as well as externally, right? All of us are public companies here. We also have a really important partner in all of our owners that fund these models, right? So every dollar is scrutinized in how we invest. You could argue that may be the thing that has slowed us down in innovation in the past, right? Because we don't always have the dollars for true R&D. But I think every one of the companies here and across our industry has made a concerted effort to really change that paradigm and find ways to really invest more smartly into the future. But yeah, very well scrutinized. Yep. That won't change.
But from a short-term ROI, I'll tell you this. I'd be surprised if somebody counters this one. You're not using generative AI today to generate short-term ROI. It's not at the stage yet. So these are all investments into what everybody thinks the customer behavior will move to. There are significant challenges in the customer sort of learning curve itself. Everybody wants it, nobody yet quite knows how to use it, and even when they use it, the subconscious of travel, so in the travel world, the subconscious of the two boxes called destination and dates is so strong that when you tell people, oh, now you can come ask me anything, they actually draw a blank. So even though the technology helps, I think just the human learning curve is slowly getting there. But all of us can feel it in our bones that it's coming. But it's not here yet, that today if you launch a feature out and you ask me, did it double my conversion? The answer is no. but it'll take a little bit, and then we'll get there. And soon it's going to become table stakes, is at least my assumption. Like you got to have it.
And by the way, that's one of the reasons why survey data doesn't really work right now, right? How many folks would be willing to acknowledge they don't want to leverage AI, generative AI, in booking travel? You're gonna sound like a newbie, right? You're just not. So folks are generally saying they are going to adopt, or saying they've already adopted. But the reality is, and all of us, and broadly in our industry, it's not an ROI channel right now. It is an investment in the future, and we're all sort of evolving.
I think it's a yes and for us. It is a future investment on future use cases, but there's also use cases today where we've realized significant savings, and it just depends on your organization. If I'm talking IT P&L, not so much. If I'm talking organization, including supporting our owners first, who are running small businesses on their own, and us introducing new digital platforms and technology that allows them to reduce some of their staffing burden, then the answer is yes. So I think it depends on how you look at that and how you frame it. So it's a yes and for me.
I mean, the only thing I would add is it's iterative, right? And so as we launch new features, we measure those features, we understand, how the guests are changing. We do that in ways where we can understand it. If it works, we scale it. If we don't, we kill it, right? So, and that's like the process for agility that I think we're all sort of chasing and pounding against. So, it's not as if you're not measuring anything. You're releasing those features, understanding, hey, that worked. I think we can improve it. That just doesn't work. Let's move on and try to. So you want to keep those investment cycles tight and understand whether you're seeing what you should see at that point in the innovation stream, and then pound it forward, if that helps. But yeah, it's like people watch the dollars, and it's important to make sure that you're smart about what you're doing and how quickly you can learn in the space. So
Yeah, it's if you don't innovate, you'll get left behind, right? So there's an element of sunk costs that you have to incur in order to not get left behind. I think we have time for one more question before we're well over time.
Thank you. Nitin, you talked about going fast with Gen AI. How do you manage risk in that scenario? Because we all know that Gen AI has a ton of different ways of, just not performing.
Perfect. So thanks. It's a good question. I was thinking about saying something when Jess was talking about it. I don't think it's black and white in saying we go slow or we go fast. You do both. There are pockets where you go fast, and then there are pockets where you want to go slow. Now, innovation as a central disruptor is not acceptable to a public company our size. And honestly, it has no place in it, because even if you have one down quarter, it has huge consequences for that, right? What you do is, how can you go fast and slow at the same point is not that you slow down the pace of the project itself. You innovate in a pocket where you are getting the learnings and things that you want to get out of it before you go and scale it up. So the shorter loop iterations have to be really fast. You cannot not be fast doing generative AI, because if you conceptualize something and if you take 4 quarters to do it, the world has already changed. So unfortunately or fortunately, this is one such technology where you do not have the option to go slow, because otherwise you're always building in legacy mode, right? So you identify a pocket in your business where it allows you to go fast. You make it very clear what is it that you want to learn out of it, and what is the success case, which if you strike, then you get to scale it up. And your architectures have to be so modular that everything has to be plug and play. Don't over-invest in any third-party company which you think is going to be there for 10 years, because you have no idea if the company is going to be there for 10 years, right? So everything has to be modularly architected in a plug-and-play manner, and thankfully, the AI technologies let you do that now. So everything is an endpoint, right? The LLM is not embedded in your infrastructure. It's not super heavily trained on your data or your infrastructure only, unless you go the SLM model a little bit, right? And so by de facto, I think what all of us are doing and building is to put ourselves in position where the core concepts and the core needs of the customer, I don't think those are going to change. So those stay in the forefront, but how you power them from the back, becomes whatever it is. And so learn, go fast, and then scale slow. That's it.
And part of it is the build versus buy as well. You can buy into a platform that's fit for purpose to the use case you're trying to solve. You can get into that a lot quicker than if you were trying to build and construct and train your own model from the ground up. So which is going to have a heck of a lot more risk. So that's a big part of it as well. It's how you're solutioning. It's a specific use case and how willing you are to partner and experiment with third parties.
So thank you all. Thanks to the panelists. Thank you for the questions. And off to the next one.